What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're talking about 5 of the best cheap midfielders in FPL. It's all well and good wanting to get Kane, Werner, Salah, Aubameyang, whoever it might be, into your squad. But at some point, you have to make a sacrifice on some cheaper players. And midfield is one area that I've seen a lot of people doing. So in this one, we're going to talk about cheap midfielders, 5.5 million or less. If it's a video you enjoy, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And of course, if you've been watching all my pre-season content and haven't yet hit that subscribe button, make sure you do. It really helps me out. You guys have been absolute legends in pre-season. So many subscribers so far, but we're not finished yet. 100k, but the end of the season is on. Hit that subscribe button and I'll get on with it. So we'll start off with Saka, who I've not seen talked about a great deal, but 5.5 million for an Arsenal midfielder is certainly enticing, to say the least. Now, whether he goes in our squad is going to depend a lot on whether he gets enough minutes, of course, and hopefully pre-season will give us some kind of indication about who maybe the first choice is under Arteta. And obviously we've got Community Shield to think about as well. Whoever starts in that could be a regular start, although we have seen times when players have started in the Community Shield and then not started game week 1. So that is something to bear in mind. One of the things with Arsenal is they got a lot of competition in the wide roles, especially if they're playing the likes of Nketiah or Lacazette through the middle. It means Aubameyang obviously going to 100% start every single game pretty much. He's going to take one of the wide positions, which leaves not as much space for others to come in. Pepe can play wide, Willian, Saka too. So it'll be interesting to see. But if he gets a little bit of a spot or a nailed spot, then he could be great. And we did see under Arteta last year, he did almost try and fit him in whenever he could. So he played left back for a while, played more attacking. Back end of last season, he did start to miss a few minutes, but there could have been other reasons for that potentially. So we'll have to wait and see. But like I said, there's a lot of competition. But if he does start, 1 goal, 6 assists last year for someone that played left back for quite a lot is pretty decent. And obviously, like I said, the great thing is we get to see the Community Shield, which might give us a little bit of an indication of who's going to start. And with Fulham and West Ham up first, pretty decent. Liverpool away is obviously tough, but Sheffield United at home is not a bad fixture either. So the starting fixtures for him, especially if you're looking to early wildcard, are pretty good. You could take a bit of a punt. I looked at the stats basically for all 5 players that are going to be on this list. He's actually the worst for per 90 minutes for expected goal involvement. It's only 0.15, which is quite low. But he did rack up the assists. And a bit like when I've talked about Greenwood in the past and Foden and maybe players like that, he's still very young. He could improve. And of course, Arteta has now been at the club quite a long time. And obviously with pre-season, he's going to be able to get his kind of tactics and thoughts and how he wants the players to play across even more than maybe he did at the end of last season. So that's something to consider about as well. He's also the worst for shots in the box per 90, but that kind of goes hand in hand with the fact he's maybe more of an assister than a goal scorer, which is okay for 5.5 million. But of course, in FPL, goals carry a bit more weight in terms of points, especially for midfielders, 5 goals versus 3 for the assist as well. So for me, I do like him. He's young. He's playing on an Arsenal side, which I think will improve this year. My only concern is the amount of rotation, which it doesn't necessarily hugely matter at 5.5 million. With so much competition at Arsenal, like I said, that's probably the one thing that would concern me. Then Maximin up next, 18.1% ownership at the time recording this. So one of the most popular players at this price. I've seen them in a lot of drafts already. And to be fair, the fixtures are pretty good. So West Ham away, Brighton at home, Spurs away and Burnley at home to start the season is pretty decent. And in terms of assist potential, he's the highest on the list. So 1.73 chances created per 90 minutes. Now, the problem he has is a bit like Jack Grealish, who creates lots and lots of chances for Aston Villa. Who is finishing these chances off? That's the only thing that would concern me. He's creating a few, Saint-Maximin, but he's passing to the likes of Joelinton, who has not been the most prolific goal scorer for Newcastle. Maybe that will change this year. We'll have to wait and see. His XGI per 90 is the best on the list, and he's only second to Souček, who we're going to talk about in a minute, for expected goals as well. So stats-wise, he's looking quite good. And he is a bit of an 80 to 90 minute man. You're going to get good minutes out of him as well. I wouldn't expect him to come off around the 60, 70 minute mark too often, at least not week in, week out. So I quite like him. He's an exciting player to watch. Like sometimes in FPL, logic almost goes out the window. And if I was picking a player based on someone that I'd actually want to maybe watch, or probably would be top of the list maybe to watch in a match, then he's got a bit of flair about him, which I do like. Now, like I said, that's not necessarily a logical reason to pick someone for FPL, but I do like him. I think he can be fun to watch, but also maybe a little bit frustrating at times. But he's got a bit of flair about him, and I think those opening fixtures, he could do well. Now, at the back end of last season, Newcastle switched to a more attacking 4-2-3-1. So if they continue that as well, there may be more goals in the team. If not, That's the only thing that would concern me is as a team, they don't score a huge amount of goals. So if we're putting him in with a lot of assist potential, are they going to get enough goals to warrant his price? 3 goals, 5 assists last year is pretty decent for a 5.5 million mid. I think if you want to take a bit of a punt, you need some savings in your squad, he could be the one to go for. So Souček up next, and he was one of the most popular names that I heard talked about when FPL released, probably because of his 5 million price tag. A lot of people think that's underpriced. I kind of agree. I don't see why he couldn't be 5.5 million in the likes of Saka, the likes of St. Maximin, and the other players we're going to talk about on the list. But as FPL managers, we shouldn't worry about that. 5 million is absolutely perfect for our squads. Now, one of the reasons he was probably priced at that is one of the things that I've seen mentioned quite a lot. He's just a defensive midfielder. He plays for West Ham in a defensive midfield position. Why would we have him in our teams? But he's one of those players, you've got to watch matches, and you'll see that he gets further forward, he gets in the box, he's getting chances from set pieces. He's a pretty damn good option for £5 million, which is quite cheap indeed. And in fact, I looked at the stats for all 5 players on the list, and I do think they're probably the 5 best 5.5 or less midfielders. Of course, if you disagree, let me know in the comments below. But for goal threat, 1.29 shots per 90 in the box, which is the highest out of everyone. His XG per 90 was 0.31, which isn't fantastic. But again, he's 5 million. If you start getting up to kind of 0.4, 0.5 per game or per 90 minutes, that's pretty decent. So 0.31, it was a pretty short kind of time frame that he was in the league, so it is a small sample size, but he's done it for previous teams as well outside of the Premier League, scored plenty of goals, so that's pretty decent for someone who's listed as a defensive midfielder. And yeah, like I said, it's a small sample size. The downside really is the fixtures. Newcastle at home is great, then it's pretty tricky. Arsenal away, Wolves at home, Leicester away. Now, there's a couple of things you could do with this guy. You could have him as your bench fodder. You play him in game week 1, you bench a Man United player, and in game week 2, you bench him, you play a Man United player. That's one way to go around it. You could just play him regardless. Maybe he'll get the odd header, maybe he'll have a few more shots in the box like he seems to have had at the back end of last season, although West Ham's fixtures were quite good from when he came into the side and started playing. But ultimately, for 5 million, he's one of the best options, arguably as good as some of the 5.5 million options as well. So don't just write him off as a defensive midfielder. So another pretty popular 5.5 million pound midfielder is Stuart Armstrong, especially for those that seem to be trying to cover Ings points. Now, cover is something we can talk about in another video, and I don't really mind it for defensive points, but I think for attacking points, it's not something I really like. Either Ings is worth it or he's not. Either Armstrong is worth it at 5.5 versus other 5.5 million options, or he's not. Now, under Hasenhüttl, they obviously play like this 4-2-2-2 formation almost. So him and Redmond not really wide players. They're coming more centrally, which is nice because then he's getting shots off more centrally, which is good in the box and stuff like that as well. For expected goal involvement per 90 out of all the players on this list, he's third out of the ones we're reviewing. But it is worth noting, obviously, per 90 stats are nice as a kind of barometer where everyone's getting kind of, measured by the same amount of minutes. But players like him, they don't often play 90 minutes. So you have to take that into account, that he might play like 70, 75 minutes and then get subbed. Because in Hasenhüttl's kind of tactics, the way he sets out, there's a lot of pressing going on, pressing from the front. And not all players can manage that for a full 90 minutes for obvious reasons. So he does come off quite regularly, which is something to worry about. And while individually, there's maybe some other players that I prefer on the list. What I like about Armstrong is he is playing in a team that's likely to score more goals than most of the other ones on the list. Maybe not Arsenal, but Southampton scored quite a few goals last year, more than Newcastle for sure. Obviously, that's St. Maximin pick there. So there is more goals to go around. So potentially, yes, he could assist Ings, he could assist Che Adams, whoever it might be. And obviously, hopefully, he would score himself. 5 goals, 4 assists. Not bad last year for someone priced at just 5.5. Fixtures are also pretty good. Palace away, Spurs at home, Burnley away, West Brom at home. Not a bad opening set of 4 fixtures, especially when you put a promoted team in there as well. My only concern, I suppose, is guaranteed starts. My assumption, obviously, again, if there's any Southampton fans, let me know below, is him and Redmond will start the season. Obviously, then they'll have 2 strikers, Ings +1, probably Che Adams, maybe Shane Long. But they also have Djenepo. They've got Smallbone who can play in these positions like Redmond. I wouldn't see Redmond maybe getting subs that often compared to Armstrong, so he's probably the one concern. Should he start the season? I expect so. But if he starts performing poorly and the other 2 start doing well in training or in the minutes they get, we could maybe see him kind of not starting every single game, which would be the only concern. But otherwise, I think he looks like a great option. So Goodmanson of Burnley is the last player on the main list, but I will talk about some other players just to maybe monitor in pre-season and maybe give a think about. Now, one of the concerns with Goodmanson is maybe playing time. I spoke to Adam, for anyone that's a regular stream viewer of mine throughout the normal season. Adam's one of the moderators. He's a journalist that watches a lot of Burnley as well. And I talked to him about playing time because he only played 617 minutes that last year. And he kind of said he fell out of favour. But right now, Burnley don't really have any other choice but to play him because of the amount of players they have. If you go onto FPL and look at midfielders for Burnley, it's very slim pickings at all. So right now, you should have that right midfield spot open and play there. But obviously, if transfers come in, it's something to maybe look at. Now, only 1 goal, 1 assist last year. But in previous seasons, he scored, I think, 7 assists and 9 assists. So pretty decent return for someone that's priced so low. And I looked at some of the goal scoring, kind of threat stats as well, like I have done for the other players. He was second for chances created per 90 from the list. Obviously, that's assist potential. And he's also second for shots in the box per 90 as well. Now, one thing to take into account with that is, yes, it's a nice barometer for all the players, but it is a limited sample size for him, only 617 minutes. So something to take into account. But he has got the quality to do that again. Like we've seen, like I said, in previous seasons, a few goals, some assists as well. In a team where crossing and balls into Chris Wood and stuff like that does kind of play a prominent way in the way Burnley play, and I wouldn't expect that to change too much this year. So if he keeps playing, he could be decent, and the fixtures are quite good. Obviously, you'd have to bench him in game week 1, or maybe look to bring him in, but then it's Leicester away, Southampton at home, and Newcastle away, and the fixtures for Burnley get quite good after that as well. So one to consider and put on the list. I would say he's not the most exciting pick, not compared to maybe an Armstrong or a St. Maximin, a Saka at Arsenal, of course, or Souček, but he does the job. He's going to be in that team if they don't sign anyone else. And Burnley are quite consistent with doing okay in the Premier League. I'm not saying they're going to score a huge amount of goals, but one to monitor and one that probably isn't going to get talked about a lot. So just a couple of other players to quickly think about before we finish the video. Lundstrom at Sheffield United. Now, he's a player I've said to avoid. One of the reasons for that, which I'm not sure if I mentioned in the video, was because of his limited playing time. He's not necessarily nailed on. But when it comes to goal threat, even without the clean sheets, he's probably one of the best at that price. So monitor him, but I definitely think he's in a void for game week 1. You got Richie and Newcastle, only 5 million. Gianni over on the Fantasy Football Scout channel brought him to my attention. Only 5 million, and was playing further forward last year. So he was listed as a defender, but towards the end of the season in that 4-2-3-1, he was playing more advanced. So keep an eye on that as well. You got Neto and Podence at Wolves. I personally think they're in a void right now because you don't know who's going to start. But if Wolves were to pick up any injuries to the likes of Jota, Traore, or even if one of Neto or Podence was injured, suddenly they look like really good options too in that Wolves team that are going to score plenty of goals this season. And Keita as well, or Keita at Liverpool, he's 5.5 million. Now, he's obviously not going to start in the front 3. He's going to play in the midfield 3. But he's shown a lot of promise, and there was a lot of expectation when he joined Liverpool. It didn't really work out straight away, but if he gets a few pre-season games under his belt, again, he could be worth a look. The one caveat to that, of course, as always, is it takes up a Liverpool spot, and you probably don't want to do that. But at 5.5 million, maybe he'll offer value at some point this season. So plenty of players to consider. If you've enjoyed it, make sure to give it a like. It really does help me out. The support has been incredible. Let's get to another 1,500, 2,000 likes on this video. Subscribe if you're new around here. 50% of people watching my videos at the moment are not subscribed. It's absolutely crazy. Just click that button. Job done. That's all you have to do. If you've not already clicked it, click it. Help me get to 100,000 by the end of the 2020-21 season. It will make me a very happy man indeed. And if you want to check me out on Patreon, if you want to support the channel a little bit further, and if you want some extra content, there'll be a Q&A going out at the end of this week. The link is in the description below. Otherwise, I'll leave it there, and I'll catch you again tomorrow for another video. Cheers all.